All right, everybody, time to join. Hey, there we go. I see a Jeff. Jeff, your microphone is muted, and that's okay if that's what you prefer.
Nope.
There we go. Now I can hear you.
Awesome.
Welcome, sir. From whereabouts are you?
I am from Noblesville, Indiana.
Indiana.
Yep.
Cool. What kind of slot racing do you do?
Well,
What are you interested in?
on the floor
There we go.
right now. It's all analog scaling right now, but I will be quickly converting it over to digital.
Slots are slots. Everything's fun.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I just recently picked this up last weekend, actually. I've got 1, 2, 3, 18 by 18 by 16 size boxes full of stuff.
That's a lot.
All this is used. Yeah, it's used, but it's not old. So top end, it's probably 3 years old. So
Not rusty or anything.
no. There's a couple of pieces that the guy got used when he got it that they're a little darker than the other ones, but they'll survive. I need to dress them up a little bit, but they're operational. I have a couple pieces in the track now, so.
So what you'll probably find is that with track that's been used quite a bit is that the connector tabs are a little loose.
Yeah.
And so what you do is you flip it over, and on a hard surface, you push down the tab that's on the hole side, right?
Okay.
The pin side, you don't need to tighten that, but where the pin goes in, if you push that tab down, it'll tighten that hole. The next time you put it together, it'll be snug. And then for the rails, have you heard about Inox MX3 yet?
I've seen somebody, there was actually a guy from, I think he was from New Zealand or Australia or something, showing that just today. And I was like, that's cool. That really cleans up nice.
Billy Cart. Yeah, I learned it from him, and it's amazing. It's like absolutely necessary for digital, but it's beneficial for any slot car of any kind, any scale, any brand. It's beneficial. And basically what it does is it makes that connection between the rails and the braids better, right? Because it reduces the arcing between the two, so it's a more consistent power. And it also is an a water repellent, anti-rust agent, so it keeps the tracks clean. You don't have to keep doing it. You don't have to clean off the rails. Since I've been using Inox, I never do anything in my track. I walk in and I start racing. It's awesome.
And that's what it's all about.
Yep, exactly. I used to, at the beginning, it was like, okay, WD-40 or whatever to clean the rails before I started racing, but that was a hassle and really annoying. But then once I started putting Inox on, I haven't even put it on for months. It's like you put it on and that's it.
Yeah.
It's really good. Hey, I see some more people on here. If anybody, feel free to hop in. You're welcome to keep yourself muted if you're just listening, or if you want to join in and introduce yourself and say hi and what kind of racing you do. I'm Greg Gaub. That's how you pronounce my last name, Gaub, G-A-U-B, otherwise known as Mr. Flippant on the various forums. I race all kinds of digital and analog slot cars. I don't do any HO scale racing, but I had that as a kid. And to me, all slot racing is good slot racing. So feel free to hop in and ask questions or talk about yourself or what you like to do, and we'll just have some fun.
Are you strictly, I'm sorry, did you say you were strictly a 132?
No, I mean, strictly, no, but primarily, yes.
Okay.
I do have some 124th cars, but I primarily just kind of drive them around on my track. It's a Skeletor track, so it's not really big enough to race two 124s side by side unless they're little 124 cars like the minis and stuff. And I do have some HO scale track and cars. I've got a micro Skeletor set, and I've got some HO scale cars, and I've got some 143rd stuff as well. but most of my fun is enjoyed at the 1/32 scale.
Okay. Yeah, I was really blown away. You never have a reference of scale, but when I got this set, there were some cars with it, and I was like, I put the thing in my hand, and then I'm like, wow, this is bigger than I thought, and the detail is much, much better than I thought. And this was used stuff. I can't imagine what the new stuff looks like.
Well, I mean, it's been pretty high detailed stuff for a good 20 years.
Right.
But if you get some really old stuff, then it's bad proportions, very low detail and stuff like that. But pretty much anything made within the last 20 years, unless it's specifically geared towards being low detail and like crash resistant, it's going to be pretty high detail. Because once the manufacturers realize that there's a bigger market for high detail cars with collectors than just low detail cars with kids, they pretty much all went in on that. Hey, Alan, good to see you. Feel free to chime in. What kind of racing do you like, Alan?
Cheers. Let's get to the business first.
Cheers.
It's too early in the day for you guys to be drinking. It's not for me.
It's 5 o'clock anywhere, somewhere, right?
It's 8 o'clock here, and that's way past start of drinking time for me. So one done, one to go.
There we go. What kind of racing do you like?
Well, it's nice to meet you guys. Right, I'm Alan, and I do analog 132 racing, NSR type cars, slotted type cars. I don't do home tracks. Never done home tracks really. I just like to go to clubs, and I do oxygen digital racing. Would have been doing Le Mans this year, but it's been cancelled because of the thing.
The thing.
I have yet to do a nice big oxygen race. That's something I certainly look forward to. Alan Smith here in the Tacoma area has a lot of really nice large tracks, and he keeps promising me that eventually he'll get sections for his large wood sectional track system that have lane changers in them and run an oxygen race of some sort. But he has yet to do that. So all the oxygen racing that I'm doing is on my little home track and mainly testing because I'm the only person with oxygen in the area. Hey, Rico, good to see you there. Colin, feel free to chime in anytime. We can't hear you. You're muted. So if you want us to hear you, you gotta unmute yourself.
Share your video. Well, while we're doing that, let's talk a bit more about oxygen.
There we go. I unmuted Colin. Yeah, go ahead, Alan. Got any questions about oxygen, or tell us how much you love it?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I still I enjoy it, but I like the retro feel of the old analog cars. The fact that it is a really old school kind of thing. And one of the guys I used to race with, he always sort of poo-pooed oxygen and said, "Oh, it's just like train sets. This is just rubbish. You guys don't even use decent motors. Come on. There's no power there." And it's hard to deny it. When you're on a six-lane analog club track, you're all absolutely going hell for leather. It is a different thing than racing digital, definitely. I mean, I enjoy it, but not as much, I don't think. And if you were going to enter one of those big events, I think that might be a problem because I heard that Gary Skip, I know that this year's is cancelled. I heard, I'm not sure if it's true, that next year's won't be taking place in the UK either. So I'm really not quite sure what's going on with that. And if I find a way to talk to Gary, I should ask him directly.
Well, I'm hoping he hops on. He indicated he was interested in what I'm doing here, so maybe he'll hop on and we can ask him directly.
Back to the agenda.
Next time I'll make an agenda and actually post it publicly. Here's what we're talking about. Hey, we got another person joining in. Go ahead, Alan.
Do I need to drop my video here for somebody else to bring their video up?
No, as soon as somebody starts talking, they'll come forward. If they, yep. See, now we see C-cores there, or I do.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi. Now it's working.
Yeah, it's working.
Tried my tablet, didn't work, but now on the laptop.
Now it's working. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Christian. I live in Germany, and I'm mostly into 133 racing. Don't have a home track. I like to go to clubs, just like Alan. But unfortunately, clubs are closed at this moment.
Yeah.
So.
You guys give a whole new meaning to the club scene. It's a completely different deal.
Well, they don't have quite the big garages that we have over here in the States. We've got all this extra space and we fill it up with garages and stuff. And then, they've got tiny little garages, so they usually are full or cars are in them.
Yeah. And our garages are the size of a standard European car.
Which is much smaller than a standard American.
Yes.
Yeah, my garage is a two American car size garage, and it's primarily storage because in my region it's not necessary to keep the car in the garage. There's very little snow, doesn't get very hot in the summer, and then so part of my garage has my Skeletor digital track in it. I visited Florida a few years ago, and people do not use their garages for anything other than their cars, because you do not leave your car outside in the sun, because you won't be able to use your car if you do that. So the person I visited had a very large Skeletor 4-lane analog up in his house. It was like on his second floor, where there was kind of like a small den area that would like be a hallway, area, but not a room, just kind of up the stairs. There was a large enough area that he just put a huge 4-lane track. And it was the most bizarre thing to me, because I'm used to clubs, of all the videos I've seen racing at clubs, and I've got scale racing nearby with very large tracks or garage tracks. So it was odd to me to be in his house up with no shoes on racing on his analog track. But yeah, with you guys over in Europe and the UK and stuff, you don't have as much room for home tracks, and clubs are pretty much the only place you can have a nice big track.
Well, I have a 2-car garage, UK style 2-car garage, and I can fit, say, 2 Volkswagen Golfs in it, but I wouldn't get a Chevy Suburban in it. That's
I can barely get a Suburban in my garage, so yeah, those cars are insanely huge. You could put a track in a Chevy Suburban.
Yeah. Suburban Raceway. Don't come to us, we'll come to you.
The ultimate portable track. Just open the hatch and start racing.
Yeah, I've seen a picture of 2 Volkswagen Golfs, or Rabbit in America. They put a track in the back of both, and they're connected.
Wow.
So they open 2 hatches, and then they have a connection between the 2?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one. I've seen some that like flip out and then they fold out, so it's a large T-shape track coming out of the back of a car, and then just portable tracks, stored in the back of the car that you then set up. Those are always clever.
And vastly expensive as well, I think, Greg.
Colin, there we go. Now I can hear you.
Yay! Yay! I can master the technology at last.
Click, click, click. What were you gonna say?
Oh dear. Yeah, those fold-out ones that look like a car. There was a firm that were making specialized ones where they were converting full-size race cars, like Porsche 917. I saw.
Yeah, slot mods.
Yeah. So yeah, fold-out slot car track out of a full-size sort of car. Fantastic stuff.
Those are pretty insane. I remember seeing that, and when it's closed up, it really does look like the 917 or whatever it was. And then when it's opened up, it's this fully landscaped, routed racetrack.
So hands up all those that actually bought their house based on the ability to lay a track down then.
People over there definitely do. Over here, pretty much any house will have a track in it.
Have a track, yeah. It's different in the States, yeah, you're right.
There is one slot mods track that I've seen in person. There is a automobile museum, the Lemay Car Museum in Tacoma, Washington. They have a slot mods track. And it is just as good looking in person as you would imagine it to be from pictures and videos and things. But of course, as a museum attraction, they have the power turned all the way down, and all the cars have magnets. So people who use it just stand there holding the controller, watching the cars go around and around. Wouldn't want to damage any of that scenery.
Well, they're pretty expensive, so
I would love to actually race on it though.
yeah.
Let's not start on that magnet, no magnet thing, right?
Oh, how about analog versus digital? How about silicon versus
But
rubber?
that's red already.
I just do both. I'm agnostic.
Slug
You
car.
magnostic.
At this point, I'm digital platform agnostic as well. I'll just race anything. You put a controller in my hand, I'm good to go.
By the way, it's impossible to race without magnets.
Is it possible to race without magnets?
No, it's
it isn't.
impossible to race without magnets. The motor needs magnets,
I was
otherwise
going to say the motor has magnets. Yep. And some motors have magnetic traction, which is always interesting.
Yeah. That's the dirty little secret that that most non-mag racers just try and kind of avoid in the conversation. And as a newbie, as I was 3 years ago going into this, I just didn't understand a club that didn't allow any magnets in the cars. How come their cars were so stuck down to the track? And I was getting tail end, flipping around and fishtailing. And it took a while before I realized what was really going on. Of course, you need to make sure. So that explained why people are using small wheels and why their motors hung a bit low in the car and that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing you have to discover. Very few people will tell you about that stuff.
So the club had a no traction magnet rule, but they didn't have anything to police whether or not the motors had magnetic traction.
That's absolutely
That's the
right.
same at my club. Same at the club I go to as well, Greg.
Well, what's the point of that?
Yeah. Everybody starts using offset motor mounts to get the motor down as low as you can possibly get, so you get the maximum amount of motor traction.
Yeah, well, we call them cheater motors. They stick to the fridge like regular magnets. I mean, we all around here we use the magnet Marshall or some other scale, and if the motor has a pull stronger than 20 grams, then that's a cheater motor. You might as well just be running traction magnets if you're going to have a motor pulling 20 grams by itself.
Most London clubs have rules around which motors are not permitted and which motors are permitted.
Yeah.
So there are normally blanket exemptions or exceptions for things like the BRM Evo motor, which is a rare earth magnet motor. That's absolutely forbidden everywhere I go. Not allowed to use that. Or there's an MB slot Song NA motor, which is these motors, the magnets are designed and magnetized to give you downforce, and the can openings are there to focus that flux leakage. So those things are not permitted. But whatever you can get out of, say, a kit standard NSR factory fit motor, however you want to fit it in, then that's permitted normally.
Never mind that certain metals can be magnetized through exterior forces.
In what way? Sorry.
Like you could try to create a magnetic attraction in the can of a motor using a Gaussing tool of some sort.
Yes, you mean to direct the flux leakage right at the track.
That was also trying to, like, if you were to remove the can from a motor, so all you had was this piece of metal that the motor used to be inside, and then use various tools or techniques to create a magnetic attraction in that piece of metal, and then put it back on your motor, put the motor back together. Could you instill functional magnetic traction through that? I've never tried. I've never read it of anybody about doing it, but the thought just occurred to me.
I would really doubt it, because the magnets that are inside those motors are so strong that the can really doesn't have a lot of effect on the strength of the magnetic field. It just has an effect on the direction, which is why you see a lot of clubs permit open can motors, that's closed can, open can, that get flipped around, and they'll tell you for this class of racing you have to put the closed end of the can down. Now, for another class of racing, you can have the open end down, and that's all to do with managing the downforce from the magnets, depending on the class of racing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we pretty much, with my digital club, we pretty much don't do any policing of the downforce that motors provide, because most of the guys, my digital club is way more casual. So it's like, regardless of how good the car is, it's pretty much always the better drivers, the ones who can stay out of trouble the best, that tend to finish in first, regardless of how good their car is. You know, we could all jumble around the cars and it would still be the same people, the same finishing order pretty much. But the analog club that I race with is much more stringent, and the specs for each series that we race says whether or not traction magnets of any kind are allowed, usually not, and then what is the maximum allowable downforce of the motor that's in the car. And it's usually a spec motor. We'll race slotted Group C cars, and it'll be the standard motor in a slotted Group C, you know, orange and bell motor. And then the first race day, or if we do a practice day, all the cars will be checked. You know, we'll put them on the magnet marshal, you know, zero out the weight, and then check the downforce of the motor. And it's usually maximum of 15 grams or something like that. Negligible amount of traction provided by the motor. But if you're over it, then it's like, okay, why am I over? This is a standard motor. I didn't do anything to it. My tires are really worn. I guess I better put new tires on.
Yeah, with digital racing, I found that magnetic downforce isn't such a consideration. And that comes from sort of several factors. But the main one, if you're racing oxygen, is that the motors themselves can only be quite low power. So the slotted flat 6 yellow or the MX-16 slotted, something like that, neither of which produce a lot of downforce. And also Gary Skipp's organization DiSCA mandates, I think it's a 1.5 millimeter gap. And you know, that's the thing that really kills any possibility of the motor dragging the track down and sucking the car down. You make them lift those motors up off the track. You know, the inverse square law comes in. Once you get a motor more than 1.5 millimeters off the track, you're not really going to get very much downforce. The other thing is, of course, if you do that and you do let the motor run low in a digital car, firstly, it's going to really hamper your car because the motor is going to suck more current, and the chip, the B1 or B2 chip or the C chip, can't drive that much current. So you're going to blow your chips up. And also, the organizers are going to get really, really, really annoyed, because if your motor can hits the rails and it's a 12 or 13 volts all the way around for a whole track for all of the cars, it's going to short that out. Everybody's going to come to a halt. Possibly power supplies get blown up. So it isn't as much of a consideration actually for digital, I found. But for analog, it's, if you can't master that on a plastic track with steel rails, you're never going to be really up there with the top guys.
Alan, didn't you race Gary's events, the Le Mans race? Have you raced that yet?
Yeah, I did last year's. I was part of the Alibaba team, the Italian team.
Okay.
And I've also raced this stuff at Rockingham. So this is the Orica, the Gas Monkey Orica, that Mark Long and Graham, the Wizard Eldridge, and myself raced. And we also do some GT type racing with yes, I've raced the Le Mans once, and it was astoundingly good. I mean, just astoundingly good. I was so much looking forward to this year, because we were going to do the same thing. I was going to race, the three of us were going to race with the Alibaba team from Italy, and that's just not happening, which is a shame.
That's what sucked me in. That's why I'm here now. I just get into quarantine and you wind up in rabbit holes on YouTube. And next thing you know, you're watching a 24-hour race done by, what's his name, John Syme.
John
and I'm just like, this is amazing. Who does this? You know, you see about the real thing, but then you're like, this is at scale? Are you kidding me? Yeah, so I was going to say, doesn't Gary hand out all his motors for you guys at that event?
He does, yeah. And I'll give Gary his due. He normally ropes Maurizio Ferrari in as well, so you've got manufacturer presence. And that means that Maurizio's always there. He's part of one of the teams, but he's always there to shut things down and deal with any lap counting issues or problems with the track or problems with the computer or problems with chips and things, make sure firmware's upgraded. But it is, yeah, it's an amazing thing to do. It is an amazing thing to do. I definitely recommend anybody to do it. It sounds insane, and the truth is, it is insane. But you've got to do it.
I mean, they're not all old guys, and I'm not considering anybody on this call to be old. I mean, I'm 50, but a 50-year-old, hey, let's go run a 24-hour race, but just with the three of us. Some of your friends will be like, are you nuts? What? No, seriously.
I think it's a big lament of Gary Skipp's, and I've often talked to him about this, is that, you know, before even this movie came out, Le Mans 66, the Ford v Ferrari movie, now the US have always had a presence at Le Mans. And I did say to Gary on several occasions that we've got to find a way to rope an American team into this, because this just isn't a truly international thing. You know, okay, we've got Italians, Spanish, German, English guys, we've got loads and loads of nationalities, but we really haven't had an American team turn up. And really that would definitely be on the to-do list. It would be fantastic to have a US team turn up. You know, that would be just the best.
So I need to coordinate my UK once in a lifetime vacation trip with the next 24-hour race, and see if I can get my Nick Kershaw, my favorite musician, to have a have a concert somewhere in the same timeline. That would be my ultimate bucket list trip right there.
There you go. I mean, once London's open for business again, I'm sure you can hook all those things together. That's for sure.
Yeah. My wife definitely wants to take a trip there, and she's got the money. So if she says let's go, I'm on the plane with her. But I have a feeling it probably won't work out as wonderfully as I want it to. But hey, you know, if we make it there, I'll have to hook up with somebody. Maybe Colin or somebody over there.
You asked about the age of guys.
What was that, Colin?
I said you're always welcome. There's plenty of stuff on, you know. I'll do some visits, some clubs around the south of London, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be awesome.
You asked about the age of the guys that do the Le Mans, the 24-hour, and it's a very big mix.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of kind of 50-somethings like me, but there are also some hired guns, young drivers who really, they do have the dexterity and they do have the eye-to-hand coordination, and their eyesight is good enough to be able to see that car right at the end of the other side of the gymnasium. So they have an advantage, you know, the kind of the 20-somethings and the early 30-somethings, and it is quite a mix. And it was notable that one of the teams, I'd have to look at the name, I can't remember it, but they won it about 4 years ago. It was quite a bunch of quite young guys. So
was it Stryker?
So, yeah. Stryker, yes.
Because John went out and got that. So was he an Austrian guy?
That's right. Yeah.
Don't ask me why I remember this shit. I don't know.
Well, that was a great video. I'm sure you were enthralled the whole time. I remember.
Man. This is so cool.
I remember watching it, and it was like you were saying earlier. This is literally just like full scale racing. You know, the cars have, you know, mechanical problems, you know, computer problems, you know, and they bring it in. They're feverishly working on it and swapping parts out.
Yep.
Work again and putting it on the track. Oh my God, we're 2 laps behind. You know.
Yeah, but in a 15-second lap, and as big as it is, and the duration, that's okay. The fact is, it's almost at the end of the 24 hours in one of those years, it was a 1 lap difference between the first and second place. And that's just amazing that happened.
Crazy.
So I think I was stood next to that Danish guy. I think his name's Janssen on the rostrum for Le Mans last year. And yeah, he is quick, but he is annoying to stand next to. Because everybody he overtakes is like, yeah, get out of my way. Yeah. It's like, yeah, get it off. It's like, yeah, come on, I'm going to pressure you till you crash. I'm thinking, shut up. Shut up. You're annoying.
I'm going to shank you with my pen. Get out of my face.
What I think that him and his team didn't realize this year is that for us, the Alibaba team, we were really there to be a distraction because Pasilipo which is the primary Skeletor club from Italy. This was going to be their year. That's what the plan was. You know, one way or another, they'd been doing this. They've done it 7 times, and this was the 8th time, and they didn't want to come second again. So we were throwing everything at it to help them to get away. And last year they won, which was great.
That is one tactic, you know, and you were talking about how annoying that guy is. That's a tactic, you know. One of the hardest lessons to learn as a racer is ignoring the people next to you and the shit they're talking, or marshals shit talking, you know, across the room they're shit talking you, or the people next to you are saying, oh, just go a little faster, you're only a 10th slower than everybody else, just push a little harder. You just gotta tune them out, ignore everybody, focus on your car and your car alone, and then everything will just fall into place. But it's so easy. One of the guys in my analog club, I still don't fully understand what he means, but he'll always say early and often. I don't know, that must be a reference to something I don't get, but he'll say early and often. I'm like, okay, I guess he means he wants me to crash early and crash often, is my only assumption. But he'll say that, and it's like he just gets in your head, and if you don't learn to block people out, then you're worrying too much about how far you're behind somebody, or whether you slipped out a little bit too much in that turn and you're pushing a little harder, and then you've got somebody right behind you and you're like, oh crap, you know, they're right behind me, and then you crash because you're just in your own head rather than block everything out and focus on driving.
Yeah, I was watching a review of Sebastian Vettel's career and the pressure he was under, has been under, with his teammates this year at Formula One in Ferrari. And one of the comments was how badly he behaves as a teammate, because he'll agree to something before the race. It's like, yeah, if we do this, and you just say, then I'll let you pass. But in the end, when push comes to shove, he will not give 1 inch, not one. And the commentator said that every good racing driver has something called the inner bastard, which means when push comes to shove, it's like, it's me and it's not you. I am going to win this and you are going to get out of my way. And no matter what they do, you know, whatever they have to do, that's what they'll do, you know. And with digital racing, and this is different than analog racing. Analog racing, maybe 2 or 3 minutes racing with fixed lap, 25 lap or something. There's no time to be talking rubbish. You are so on it at 100%. With digital, especially over a distance, you know, 4 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours, there's lots and lots of talking going on. And you just have to either shut it out or you have to give as good as you get, you know. So, but it is different.
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, not quite as long a span of time or with as many cars on the track or as large of a track. But when I've got 6 guys on my 54-foot 2-lane track, and everybody is just, you know, in and out and right behind each other, and you know, everybody's timing their braking points the same, so you're not, you know, getting rear end collisions and stuff. It's truly sublime. And you know, every time I have a race where that happens for, you know, 10 or 20 laps without a crash, I'll go back and watch the video if I took a video, just to appreciate how wonderful of a thing that is, to just, everybody is just following and doing the right things for a consistently long period of time, and it's wonderful. And then then you're in a race where, you know, everybody's crashing 5 times a lap, and it's not nearly as fun.
You have more downtime than runtime.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, if we had enough people to do active marshalling, as I call it, the constant marshalling with no track calls, the races are done so much quicker. There was a couple of times a couple of years ago where we had 11 guys at a race, and I was like, okay, well, now we have enough people. You stand there and marshal that corner. You stand there and marshal that corner. And we were able to get through like 100-lap race in, you know, 15 minutes or something like that. And it was a unique experience. So, you know, that's something that I would like to have more of, but the hard part is getting people to actually come around and have a race.
Yeah.
You know anybody in your near area there, Jeff?
Here, there's They run HO. It's called Indy Slots. So it's all HO, and they're all about the open wheel indies. I've not been. In fact, I haven't been anywhere, as most of you guys have.
I'm lucky. I've got all kinds of racing all around me. I'm fortunate in that.
Yeah, there is some. There is some. I'm sure I'll connect more. There's someone just north of me, not that far. But again, a lot of it's just home tracks, basements, garages, and it's not necessarily a club. It's just friends who got together or get together on a consistent basis, if you will.
That's what I call a club.
Yeah, I guess that's what you call a club. Yeah, and it's honestly, you guys know, it's harmless fun. No one's getting in trouble here. They're just sharing a beer or two, acting like big kids, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
That's what we all do.
Yeah. So I really enjoy it, and I'm very infant stages. I mean, I'm like, if you put it in chronological order, I'm 2 days old.
In slot car years.
Yeah, it's slot car years, whatever that may be. You know, you had this stuff as a kid, but again, you come back at it and you're like 50 years old, and you're like, well, this is really kind of cool stuff. It's fun. And that inner, like you said, Ellen, that inner bastard comes out, and you're like, my kid's not going to beat me. I don't care if it's analog. They're not beating me. It's your kids, dude. Let them win.
Yeah, I learned that one the hard way. My younger son, I'll go ahead and tell the story. Had slot cars as a kid, and then you grow out of it, right? And then when my youngest was, I think 7 or 8. He had just had his, he had got a bunch of Christmas money is what it was, and from his grandparents and such. And we were out having lunch, and just across from where the restaurant was Fantasy World Hobbies. In this area, they were like the biggest hobby shop. And we're like, okay, let's go see what kind of interesting things are at the hobby shop. And of course, they had a slot car track, you know, on display to play with, and slot car sets of all kinds. And I was like, yeah, slot cars are fun. I remember playing those when I was a kid. And so my younger son was enamored. He's like, well, I've got all this money, you know, I can buy a slot car set. I'm like, okay, let's think about that. We'll come back next week, and if you're still, you know, dead set on it, then we'll let you spend your money on that. And like, that's going to change his mind. So the next week we go back and we look around at the sets, and he picks Speed Racer set, an HO scale set with just a huge track and you know, Speed Racer cars, you know, Racer X and Speed Racer. And we brought it home and started kind of putting it together, and both of my sons, you know, went up to his room and started putting it together, and they couldn't get it to go, right? You remember HO scale, you know, you got to clean the rails for half an hour before the thing will go consistently. And once they got the car to go consistently, it would, you know, it was an on and off switch. You know, they couldn't get it to stay on the track because it would just go too fast and come off. And so they were very disappointed in that. And I'm like, oh crap, you know what, you know, how am I going to deal with this situation? And lo and behold, one of the track pieces was missing a rail. So it could not be put together as provided. And although the hobby store had essentially a no returns policy, I was able to convince them to give us store credit because the set was missing a rail. It was non-functional, technically, out of the package. With that store credit, and in the meantime, knowing I was going to go back a week later and get store credit, what could we replace this with? That's when I started doing my Googling, and I found out about 132nd. I found about Skeletor Digital, and I was like, changing lanes? No, I remember TCR as a kid and wanting, oh my God, that would be so awesome to change lanes. And so I built this up to my sons. I'm like, we can get this set. Dad'll chip in the difference to get this other set with what you paid for that set, and it'll be so much more fun. And all three of us could race together. Well, that's me falling down the rabbit hole. And here I am, you know, 10 years later, 11 years later, Jesus. My kids are both off living their lives, you know, out of college and everything, and I'm still here playing with slot cars in my garage.
That's a win-win, man.
I'm not complaining.
You get the track, they left, it's all you.
So what started the story is the irony, of course, is that my younger son, who was most enthralled at the start, of course, all three of us are now racing on the living room floor with a digital slot car track, and my older son and I understood better how to slow down in the turns and not crash, while my younger son could never hold himself back long enough to stay on the track long enough to win any races. And so he decided he didn't like slot cars at all anymore because he could never win a race. So of course now I'm regretting not having instructed my son, my older son, and myself to hold back and let him win some races so that he would actually race with me for a little bit longer. My older son, he really went in deep, and he started actually coming to the analog club with me and stuff. He got his own controller, and for years he would go with me to the analog club until pretty much he went off to cars and girls and college and things.
You've always got to give kids an advantage, haven't you? So an extra magnet or something like that, just to give them a bit more traction around the corner. A slightly bigger motor, just something which gives them an edge. Otherwise, it's not fair racing.
No,
that's one of the lovely things about digital racing, isn't it? That you can sort of you can adjust the speeds up and down and such like, so you can handicap the dads, so that the kids have a great race, and it's nice and even, which is different. It's different, and it just makes it much more exciting than the old days. I mean, my youngest brother, he was in the same situation, when we were all racing as kids. He was young, he came off all the time. He hated Skeletrix in the end. He really did. Didn't like it at all. Me and my middle brother, we used to whop his ass all the time, It was like, but it was great fun. So we kept going. And my brother's been racing Skeletrix as long as I have. So he's got a set at home. He's always got it down in the living room. He's got, I'd say about 150, 200 cars or something like that he calls out, occasionally, and sort of polishes up and have a run around the track. Oh, I remember this one. It's an early Ninko car. Look at this go.
Look at it hop.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been nice to have your brother, who bailed out on you guys, stay with you. I just call that thinning of the herd.
Yeah.
For those who are like, this sucks. Okay, see ya.
It's motor racing.
Exactly. There's only enough seats for a handful of people. Get better.
That's right. And if anybody thinks it's a good idea to let their kids kind of win stuff before they're really good enough to do it, they've probably got young kids. Now, my son Hayden, he's just 16. And he always used to struggle on his bike, and I used to take him mountain biking, and he would struggle to climb the hills and all that kind of stuff. And I'd say, it's okay, Hayden, I'll wait for you at the top. No problem and everything. I wouldn't wait for him. I'd go and I'll see him at the top. And now, 16 years old, he's embarrassing me how good he's getting. He's like, I'll wait for you at the top, Dad, all right? I waited for you, all right? Oh, for God's sake, or playing pool. I've never let him win. Which means that when he beats me, and it does happen, he's like, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely personalities. My younger son who quit because he could never win is entirely different than my older son. He was definitely, don't let me win kind of thing. But they're both successful, so I think I did an okay job eventually. But yeah, you'd never know until it's too late, or you did the right thing, right? You do what you think you should do to encourage the kid, and then if he's encouraged, good job. If he's discouraged, well, shit.
Hey, it's no different. I mean, I coach robotics teams, and it's no different. You're collaborating with another team at the game during that run. But still, if you're having a bad day and you pair up with some crappy teams, that's just round robin luck of the draw or unluck of the draw. You just deal with it. And if you don't make it to the finals or make it to state or make it to worlds, you sucked. Your year was bad. And that was our year. No one went to worlds. They canceled the whole thing, but we didn't even make it to state. So it was just a bad year.
Yeah. This year?
But bad years focus your attention, right? Bad years and bad races focus your attention. whenever I have a bad race at the club or any time, that car is put on the side and I pull it to pieces. Make sure, like, I need to know what happened. Was it my head? Was it what was going on? Was it the car? What was going on? Whenever something goes wrong, it's a real focus to improve. Real focus to improve.
Yeah, some cars you just can't get to go though, can you? I mean, I've had similar cars. I had two NSR Moslers. One of them was cracking. Nothing, it was class leading, and the second one, which was my backup car, I'd struggle to get like third place in a race all the time. And even though it's still the same NSR Ultra tires, and the same setup, same motor, etc. It's difficult then. What do you do?
Well, for me, what I always do, let me show you these. You mentioned the Mosler, so bring a couple of those out. And I have, I learned quite early on to invest in a racing pair strategy. So these are my two NFL Moslers for racing at NASCAR would. What I do is, if you've got two cars, one will always be better than the other. So take your best car and you race that. That's the one you really are going to race. That's the one you're going to compete with every night. And the second car is there in case the first car gets smashed to pieces or breaks something. But it's also the car you can tinker with. Like, pull it apart, flatten the chassis, change the motor, change the gearing, change the axles, keep working it and working it and working it till it gets to be as good as the first car. When it gets to be better than the first car, it becomes your first car. And then the one that's been your stalwart, solid, dependable car, then that becomes the experiment. Now that car needs to catch up. So that's really how I've been doing it. That racing pair strategy is how it goes. But you are right that plastic chassis cars like these, some just work and some just don't. And sometimes it defies logic why they work and why they don't. It just defies logic.
Yeah, one of the guys in my analog club usually prepares multiple cars because he likes to have a set of cars that he can use for, guest racing, IROC racing. So he'll have 4 of the same class car, and he'll set them all up the exact same way. And he'll test them and drive them around a bit and choose which one he thinks is the best, either because he gets the best laps or it's most consistent or, whatever the case may be. Although they're all set up the same way, he finds one that he likes the best. And then the others, when we're racing that car in a series, the others become loaner cars because we want to have new people come in and join us. And we want to be able to say, come and join us. We'll give you a controller. We'll give you a car to race. And so he's got these cars. He uses them as loaners. And then it's endlessly funny when somebody comes in and uses one of his loaner cars and beats him with the car that he did not choose to race with. And he's like, ah! And he's a good racer, it's usually not his trigger finger that's causing the problem. It's usually some other thing. And he's like, he'll be racing his car. There won't be anything wrong with his car, but the ones that he's left behind for whatever reason in this other person's hand this particular night, got one extra lap throughout the night and beat him onto the podium or whatever the case may be. It's always funny when that happens.
Going back in time, I prepped some cars for the land speed record that they did, Skeletor. I mean, it's been back up on the forum again recently. It was up in the Midlands in the UK about 11 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. 2011, I think, 2010, 2011. And I prepared 2 cars. Rich G was there as well, and he prepared a couple of cars, and he went pretty quick. And mine were not quite as quick as his. But one of the moderators of a slot forum at the time was there, Ian Bilby, Bleep. Might be before your time, Greg. I can't remember.
I remember.
No, you remember when Bleep was.
Yep.
Yeah. So he borrowed my car. He whacked my bloody arse. He did. He was much quicker than me. I think I got 6th overall, and he got 4th with my car.
On the land
Annoying.
speed record, not racing laps, but on the land speed record.
It was it was a scale mile over rough ground.
Yeah.
And
Skeletor track.
Skeletric, yeah, it was Skeletric's track provided by Skeletric. Skeletrics were there. I did all the electrics and the timing and stuff like that for it. Yeah, but it was it had to be a Skeletric's car. It had to be powered by a Skeletric standard power supply. And apart from that, it was all free stuff. Free, and you could have whatever motor, whatever axles, wheels, and things like that. So mine was all slotted NSR type stuff underneath. I think I had a Skeletor 38,000 RPM motor in it, which was, yeah, it was wicked. It sounded insane compared to all the rest of the cars that were going up. It was
the
good.
One that was on the Gadget Show? I remember seeing an episode of the Gadget Show.
Yeah, it was on the Gadget Show. Yeah, it was. Who was the guy? Who was the guy that was there? Jeez. Yeah. Anyway, it was on the Gadget Show. They had some very pretty girls there as well. It was sponsored by some booze place as well. It was nice. It was fun. But, yeah, I nearly lost the top off my car. So it was a venue called Chatham House, and they had a whole load of rally cars doing a sort of like a rally stage there at the same time, proper stuff. And the local fire brigade were there. I didn't know this. I parked under a tree by a whole load of cars. And when I came back to my car, all the other cars around me had their tops cut off.
Oh.
So yeah, I managed to park in the demonstration area for the fire brigade.
Oh dear. One thing that did strike me about that speed record, the Skeletric speed record, was that, you know, plastic track, it warps and stretches in the sun. And I was watching this Gadget Show episode, I'm thinking, this is going to go wrong here. There's no way that this can work. And it, you know, it did stretch. Yeah, it did stretch. But, you know, I mean, how are you going to find a hall for, you know, a quarter mile or whatever to do that indoors? But I was surprised to even see that anyone would even try and lay plastic track out in the sunshine. I have a pub track that I take out and I do, and it's in sections, put it together, and it's never outdoors. You know, I will never do it outdoors. It has to be in a hall. So because of that reason.
Did you guys ever watch James May's Big Toys? He recreated Brooklyn. Holy crap. 2 3/4 miles of Skeletric track. And you talk about the warping. There was a scene in there where it had sit in the sun and it warmed up and the track just did this. And they had to take sections out. It was bad.
Yeah, it was a great episode.
Yeah, my favourite part of that is when they had to lay a pontoon across the water.
Yes.
Thinking, this really is insanity. This really is insanity that you think you're going to do.
Spiral going up a level in the building. Spiral around.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
That was.
Yeah, definitely the way to do that is a digital car with an onboard power supply. You get away with just about anything if you could do that.
And I've been following a lot lately on the forums. I can operate any operating system, Mac, Windows. I have a great MacBook Pro at home. It just doesn't seem to be a lot going on in the Mac space. I don't understand it. Maybe you guys can enlighten me a little bit. Because most of you guys aren't Mac people. Is that the simple answer?
I've got a MacBook, and my first use of computers were Macintosh in when I was in college. My first computer in my own house outside of my parents' house was a Classic 2, 4 megabyte of RAM and 40 megabytes of a hard drive. That was good.
Oh.
But since then, you know, it's pretty much been Windows. But I do have a MacBook It's been several years since I bought it, so it's not any kind of recent. But I think if I were to just kind of throw a dart at a reason, probably just a whole lot of cheapskates in the slot car world. I don't know. A lot of the slot car people have been around for such a long time that computers are a necessity that they would rather not have in their near their slot car track. The Alan Smith, the guy who runs Scale Racing Center nearby, his previous track was controlled by a DOS computer with a command line based lap counter on his computer. So, and this was up to like 5 years ago, before he moved from his old establishment to his new one with lots and lots of tracks and fancy computers and stuff. So to him, it was just a necessity.
We're using, at my local track, we're still using a computer that's got Windows 3.1 on it.
Yep, TrackMate or something like that.
And the card that's used that interfaces to the track is ISA. So it's pre PCI, it's pre PCI Express, it's pre wherever we are now.
It's like a printer. It's like a printer card, isn't it? An old printer interface.
The computer died, and I had to find a computer from about 1993 or something like that in order to be able to do that. And do you know what? I found one. Rich G had one underneath his bench. It's like
holding up the corner of the table.
But you know, three of the clubs I go to, 4 of the clubs I go to, still use that DOS-based Skeletor lap counter, and it's, you know, there's nothing you can. If the computer fails, they are done. The problem is, I mean, I tried to figure out how to up that to put that application onto a more modern platform, and it's just not possible because it's a real mode. It's a real mode application, so it won't even sit within a harness within Windows. There's just no way, which is sad. But there you go. But you know, there are so many new programs out there. I think Race Coordinator is the big one. And for my home club, NASCAR, we've got a Race Coordinator set that's all ready to go. And I think it's just a matter of finishing off the gantry now and getting the new gantry into place. But you know, I would say that, yeah, a lot of slot car racers, if you're running a club, if it works, don't touch it, is the motto. Which I never really, that's not me. For me, computers, that's been my livelihood for a very, very long time. Ever since I was at school, playing around with computers, way before the IBM PC came out. But when it came down to my personal life, didn't really want computers in it, which is why I've got, you know, guitars and not keyboards and synthesizers. You know, it's just how I kind of choose to live my life. But really, even though I choose that, I think a slot car club that's still running a real mode DOS-based lap counter, it's not good. It's not cool. I mean, slot car racing is retro cool, but having a really crap DOS-based lap counter is not retro cool.
Well, you nailed it with, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and don't mess with it if it's working. You know, those systems worked, and they were working for those people, and until they stopped working, they had no reason to mess with it, and they would be averse to messing with it, because if they did anything that caused it to no longer work, then they would not be able to race anymore. So they would rather have something collecting dust from, 40 years ago than to change it to anything for fear that it would not work, or that it would take all kinds of work and futzing around to get it to work. So they're just like, nope, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, Jeff, I've seen lots of people, coming on the boards saying, where's a good Mac, race management for my Skeletor or my whatever system, and there's
if you run virtual,
them say, well, just put on a Windows emulator and run this program.
But somebody did write one for the Mac some while back. So it was an American, wasn't it? It was a guy in the States that was doing it, and it only got Yeah, only got so far. It didn't really get to the level of maturity of some of the others.
He committed suicide.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that'll be a reason then.
Yeah. Yeah, he was updating it for, it was called Race Manager, and I still have a copy of it. And I can, in fact, Jeff, if you want, I can send it to you that it's Mac compatible.
Sure.
But he was working on updating it to work with the APB when life got to him. And yeah, he stopped doing anything. That was unfortunate. But yeah, he was in the analog club that I raced with. But yeah, other than that, I don't see very many other Apple native race managements.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point. Yeah, it still works. I mean, funny article weeks ago that the U.S. government was looking for Fortran people for their unemployment insurance.
Cobol.
Are you kidding me? Fortran?
Cobol.
Yeah, to update their.
Yeah, I can do Fortran. How much is it?
You're
How much are they
hired.
offering?
You're hired. I don't know what it costs, what the pay is, but
Wasn't it to update the unemployment systems or something like that? Yeah.
It's so out of date, that program, that system, it's so out of date, that language, that when they did the announcement on the stage, the politician that announced it called it Cobalt instead of Cobol. They didn't even, it's so out of date that it's out of the lingo. Nobody knows about Cobol anymore. Good, it's horrible. Bloody horrible language.
What about OS2? Yeah, so Jeff, send me a private message on one of the forums or whatever, and I'll get a copy of that to try out.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm about to go digital, and I know you and I had talked, Greg, on online a little bit, just back and forth about some platforms that are out of production, but you can potentially still find some. But now with the ARC being at least on the Skeletrix brand, which obviously I have a crap ton of track, no reason to go anywhere else. It seems like they've now released the BLE protocol for talking to the pro. Some are trying to write or have. Well, you've got the what's it called? I don't know. Someone else wrote an app.
The Magic app you're talking about.
Magic app. Yeah, those guys. Magic Studio or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to go Arc Pro. That seems to be the most modern. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It is the most modern. I got involved in the design of it, going way back when Skeletrix first started talking about wanting to do an app-based type system. I think the issue is that it's very limited in terms of the data streams.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do and how it can work is quite limited. I wouldn't write off the old advanced power base yet. The APB, they've got like 700 in stock at Skeletrix in Kent at the moment. So brand new. So it's not like it's completely dead. They haven't managed to sell them all yet. And in terms of capabilities, if you look at the different number of programs that are written for the advanced power base, the C7042, then I mean it's just such a wide choice. Mm-hmm. And you know, you can go from club level type stuff. So if you run PC lap counter is a bit like Trackmaster in terms of the way that it works. It's very club oriented, the way it's set up and the way it runs the races and such like. And you've got all the way through to ESRM wrote something where you can use Xbox controllers as wireless controllers to run it. And that was much more about a sort of like a game type version. And then you've got RCS64. RCS64 is just fantastic. It was based on a lot on SSD console, which was launched at the same time as the advanced power base. It was launched at the same time because I got Andy Wallace involved with Scalextrics at the time that they were designing it. So the power base was actually designed to work with SSD console, but rather than someone writing it afterwards, you know, we fine-tuned what could be done in the power base to suit what the program could do. Yeah. And RCS 64 is built on that, adding in more features, things like play features like weather effects and what else has it got, Greg? It's got loads of stuff on RCS 64. It's really very good.
Yeah, tires, fuel.
Yeah, tires, and they've got other things. Yeah, yeah. So for example, on RCX 64, if it says it's raining, then you have to get in and change into the pits and change your tires. If you don't do that, right, it makes the car more tricky to handle. So it makes it more sluggish, and you know, you can't corner accelerate or brake so well. So you know, that's quite clever stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it comes. Go ahead.
You'd never be able to do that on Art Pro. Is the problem?
Yeah.
And think the other things are like on SSDC we did a thing so that fundamentally as your car used fuel, then the car got faster.
Yeah.
Right. And it's quite a simple algorithm, you know, that you can work out. So that works quite well. But also, if you get to the point where you're running out of fuel, then we put stutter in. So the car starts to splutter, you know, as you're going around the track, right? You know, and that's real, you know, the car's really sort of like having difficulty getting around the track, and it's all done by the software. So you couldn't really do that with Art Pro, unfortunately. But Art Pro's great for you know, everybody loves Art Pro because you plug it in, you run it, and it works. C7042, you've got to master it. It's very complicated at the end of the day. Greg did some fantastic videos. If you've seen Greg's videos,
I have.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we needed them. We did need them. You know?
Just figuring out those cryptic, you know, messages on the screen was like, and even my videos are hard to follow. Press up, down, left, right, go this way, that way, and then the other, and then push enter. It's like, you know, and then Chris did his spreadsheet things. But for your question, you know, which should you get? I kind of break it down to casual versus competitive. You know, if you think you're going to be competitive, you know, and want everything to matter and work, then I would say get the C7042 APB because of its maturity, let's say. And it doesn't, and because with the newest firmware that you download and install onto it, it doesn't matter where your guide is in relation to your LED for lap counting and stuff. Whereas, unfortunately, with the Arc Pro, still you have to have your guide blade and LED in the right relative space between them, or the lap won't count. And also with the Arc Pro, they still haven't completely eliminated problems counting laps if you happen to be holding down the lane change button when you cross the lap counter line. So if you're just playing for fun, and then the Arc Pro is great, you know, and I use it on my portable track, and the kids love it. Controllers being wireless, very affordable wireless controllers, which can be used for oxygen, which is also a big plus. And it's just a whole lot of fun, you know, with the Skeletor app or with the Magic app or whatever comes down the pike. But my entire digital club, the Skeletor tracks, all use the advanced power base. You know, we either use wired controllers or we use you know, third-party wireless controllers, the SCS wireless controllers. It can be used with Scorpius controllers. It can be used with, you know, if you get one of those Bluetooth boxes, controller interfaces, or slotted controllers, or with the ESRM with the Xbox controllers. There's just more versatility with the APB. And like Colin was saying, you can still get it, you know, at original retail price. Basically, you can still pick those up, or if you find a deal on eBay. So it's at this point in time, it's still the one to get. And I'm hoping that very soon they'll come up with a new version of Arc Pro that eliminates those two problems, and then we can start recommending that. Because I think it's pretty good. I think it's competition level. It might not be as versatile as the APB, but I think the Arc Pro is competition level once those two issues are resolved.
Yeah, let me provide you some sort of context on why I'm asking these questions. Is because what I want to do is I want to take this to a different realm, a different world. Again, where I've played right now is in the middle school and potentially high school levels for quote teams. I'd like to take that, build these tracks, and have a season over the course of the school term where, okay, the kids show up, however many teams, round robin, blah, blah, blah. But I want a system that if I show up, it works, it provides the kids they don't have to worry about a damn thing. They show up and they're racing, and that's it. I'm concerned about everything else as far as the track works, the lap counting works, this, that, and the other thing, which is going to make for a good experience for the kids and their parents, so on and so forth. I just want to know what in that realm would work and what you guys potentially think of that type of thing.
I would still say the advanced power base then, because even with just the tower, with not using a computer, with just the tower, you can still do pretty good races. You know, lap base, lap limited, time limited, you know, track calling and all that kind of stuff. Like everything you saw in my video, you can do that all with the tower. You know, that's not with a computer, and that would. And that's what I was using for my portable track at first until the Arc Pro came out. And the kids, in fact, I did multiple middle school things. You might have seen some of those videos. The kids absolutely loved, you know, racing with that. You know, it was just a once a year thing for them, but I would still say that that's the way to go, is for that kind of thing, until such time as Skeletor fixes those two issues.
Yeah.
That's such a pain in the ass.
Guys, it's been fun, but I have to go.
Yeah, thanks for
It's
coming.
late over here. I would like to do it again sometime.
Yeah, this is good. I think we'll do it some more.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Christian.
Looking forward to
Bye.
that. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Yeah, so you were shaking your head, sir, as far as, yeah, the APB is probably the best platform for that type of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I've done a lot of middle school stuff with APBs, but I've always done it with a computer as well, and a big screen projecting up on the side so everybody can see, you know, where they are, where the laps are, etc. I mean, what's really good is that you can very easily reduce the speed of the cars so that you can get it down to something that kids can get on and they can compete, but without coming off and crashing on every corner.
Yeah.
You know, so you can get it all the way down. So it becomes an exciting, fun experience rather than just a car crash.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going for. Yeah, this is completely different in the fact that I like the fact that you have to dial it down so they stay on the track. And now it's down to driver skill and when you're going to brake, when you're going to shift, all that kind of stuff. Because no one likes stoppages of play, or if you have kids marshaling the corners and they don't stop, well, they're putting that back on and now they're already behind because everyone's gone by them. And if it's if it's like a 5-minute race to just try to, what can you do in that 5 minutes? First one wins. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to sort all this out in my head on how it would all work out.
Well, let me burst a bubble here. No matter what you do to make sure the cars stay on as well as possible, they will get crashed off.
Sure.
And they will get crashed off a lot and repeatedly. And so what I've found is, so now you're talking about doing a different kind of thing where it's over, you know, multiple races and, you know, a long period of time.
Oh, yeah.
So at the beginning, crash and burn only, just crash and burn only, because until they get until they get that you absolutely have to not crash, and that when you hit somebody else, it's not always them who's getting crashed off. Like, you can't always shunt somebody in the corner and think you're going to stay in the track and they're coming off. Sometimes it's the other way around. So they have to learn and fully understand that you have to stay on to win, and you can't go crashing everybody else to win.
Right.
And then once they get that, then you can start, whatever, increasing things. But I found that even within the short span of a 2 to 3 hour party, you start out with crash and burn, and they love it. They don't care that they're crashing off. You get an upset kid every once in a while, but they love it. They don't care. So what I usually do is I set the speed such that pretty much all the cars can go around the whole track without coming off at full throttle, except for one turn, the one at the end of the longest straight. If they don't slow down for that one, then they're going to crash, right? So all the rest of the tracks are shunts.
Two turns, Greg. Two turns. I always do 2 turns.
Either way, they're gonna crash off, and so at first it's nothing but crashes. So it's the first turn, 5 cars come off, and the guy who's still there is the winner, and that's okay. We're gonna have another race now. You're the winner. Next race, and then we do the whole thing again. And then throughout that 2 to 3 hour period, they're crashing less and less and less and less, and you'll have kids that get it right off the bat, and you'll have kids that just never get it. But eventually, you're going to have races where multiple kids are on the whole time until the race is actually finished in some way, right? So I usually do like a 10-lap race, 10-lap crash and burn. For the first hour and a half, it's crash and burn, and that's the winner. And then for that last half hour or so, you've got kids who are able to keep it on and finish the race, and they're actually vying to win the race then, as well as staying on. And so you'll have the kids who are slow and steady wins the race kind that they were winning earlier because they didn't crash. But then you've got kids who were going faster earlier and have learned not to crash, passing them and winning because they actually got the number of laps first. And then the kids who were just holding at the steady pace realize, oh, I've got to actually speed up and slow down. And, then they all start learning, and it builds and builds and builds. So for your situation, first meet or two, crash and burn, but then you can start talking about speeding things up, and they're actually going to be racing rather than crashing and learning, as many people call it, crash and learn, not crash and burn. But it's always fun at the end of, towards the end of one of the parties, I reveal to them that in fact they've been running at 25% or 30% of the actual full power. And then I say, well, you guys are getting pretty good. Do you want to have more power? Do you want to see what happens? Yeah, they're like, yeah, oh my God, we're going to go faster.
You can go faster? Yeah.
And then I crank it up to 50%, and they're like, oh my God, this is so much faster. And then I'm like, well, that was only 50%. And they're like, what? And so then I'm like, okay, I'll turn it up to 100%. But I usually only go like 80 or 90%. And then they're just all crashed off on the first turn. And I'm, usually I end up driving with them at some point because they want to see how good the guy who brought the slot cars are.
Yeah.
And so then I'll be buzzing around the track at 100% power. And of course, down the long straight is like 1 second, and it's gone. And then I'm, they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. These cars are crazy fast. And then I let them try, and they're just like, barely touch the throttle and the cars go flying off.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, no, let's go back down. Let's go back down to the slower power. It was more fun then. Or the mom and dad's race. That's also really popular because you've always got the dads, watching their kids racing, and then you're like, okay, let's have a parents race and see how they do. And the kids love watching their parents crash.
Yeah, so I mean, this has been in my head for a while, and I'm just like, it's something absolutely different that isn't being done. We have prevalent, and I hate to keep using it, but it's what I've been exposed to a lot. We have prevalent robotics throughout the U.S. and the world at the educational level. It's everywhere.
Yeah, my kids both did it.
Yeah, but it just seems like, well, and I'm not saying that this wouldn't happen here too, but it seems like okay, it's cheap enough that the kids or the school or the parents can buy the game set, take it to their house. If they have their own kit, they can build a robot, and they can practice 6 days a week if they want to. Then they show up at meets, they clean everybody's clock, they qualify for state, and then they qualify for worlds, and then it's just a repeat cycle, rinse, wash, repeat type of thing. Here, I think you could really make it different, because if you're running a season per se, there's different tracks, and they don't have prep time. You don't have the opportunity to run this track. You don't know, oh, well, I know there's some sharp corners in here, or there's long straights, or what have you. It's a much faster track, or this is a much slower track. So I think it would level the playing field quite a bit for teams that think they're good and cocky, and they come in and they're getting, like you said, Greg, crashing and burning, where another team who's just very rookie, very newbie, just making their way, putzing around the course and doing their thing. They wind up winning races, and you're like, what are they doing? That's so different. Well, they're not overzealous, first of all, and just playing a different way on strategy. And then when you get into the tuning aspect of it, there's a lot that goes into that too. I really want that STEM portion to come out of this.
Yeah.
I know it's here.
Well, you gotta look into the building of their own cars thing.
Yeah.
You know, so they understand what, you know, how the cars actually work, you know, what's important to the car's proper functionality and stuff. I've seen a lot of different things. Skeletric used to actually sponsor Skeletric in schools, or Skeletric for education, or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I think they're still doing it. I think they're still doing it. There's a little bit, yeah. It's ongoing. I saw something quite recently online.
Well, we need to
probably
get
probably just in the UK though.
Yeah,
I wouldn't think it would stretch all the way over to the States.
I haven't seen anything in the States, but that kind of thing is, you know, when I saw that being done over there, I was like, that would be awesome. You know, you get kits and track and stuff, and the kids build cars. And, you know, I've also seen, you know, incorporating 3D printing, of course, you know, designing and 3D printing chassis, designing and 3D printing bodies. You know, there's the one guy with the open slot car where he literally 3D prints everything except, you know, the axles and the motors. You know, he's printing the wheels, and he's printing the tires with, you know, flexible filament and stuff like that, you know.
Wow.
So that kind of thing would really probably be a good way to kind of start with your STEM, with your robotics kids.
Yeah.
You know, get them into the design and construction of the cars, and then race them, and then improve and race and improve and race and improve and race.
Right. I'm actually working with Gary Skip on a standards right now. I reached out to him, and obviously he's got all his standards laid out for WEC and BTCC and Le Mans and whatever else. And I pitched this idea to him, and I said, look, I really want to lean on you for your expertise, because you've already written these things and they're very thorough. And yes, you guys are, quote, pros, if you will, amateur pros. You've run 24-hour events, you've run long distance, or what have you. How can we bring that down to this level and get it into the next generation? Because Gary and I both feel, and trust me, I'm new at this, but he's been at it for a while. You guys can attest to it probably. He feels like it's skipped a couple generations, and there's that absolute fear of it just going away. I don't know.
I don't see it that way, actually. I mean, I know a lot of people think about that, about, you know, how it is. It's like, oh, all the slot car races are over 50 years old, that kind of thing. What I would say is there's a gap, and this happens, I think, generally. It's a lads and dads type thing. So you've got guys, they bring along their sons. We've got two really hot racers at our club who are about 14 years old. And when I say hot, I mean one of the kids is so good he can expect to win the night. Some nights, you know, once a month he will win overall. What happens, of course, is you hit your adolescent years, as happens to us all, and wine, women, and song take over. And so there's a gap, right? And this happens to us all. It happened to me. I used to do radio controlled car racing until I discovered beer, whiskey, thrash metal music, and women. Yeah. So it's not necessarily, you know, the demographic doesn't really show what's happening, because there are young guys who are into it, but then they go away and then they come back again.
Right.
I think the main thing is that in at least in the States, and I'm sure this is at least somewhat the case worldwide, is that there are so many other things for young adults and adults to get interest in, that they often remember slot car racing as just toys that don't work very well. They never had the exposure to the club level racing, so they just played with toys, and then they only remember them as toys, and so they do other things. And it's getting them exposed to the competitive side of things, and where you actually get into cartooning and get better at things, which a lot of people still think of, when you say, okay, you want to do some miniaturized auto racing, a motorsport of some sort, the first thing that comes in their heads is going to be RCs, not slot cars. That was a really cool track. I remember seeing that one, Colin. Which one was that?
That was at the local junior school. So that's not middle school. What do you call that? No, maybe it is middle school. Which is high school? Is what age in the States?
High school is 14 to 18.
Yeah.
So this was 5 to 12 or 5 to 11.
That's elementary.
Elementary, and that was a digital track.
Is that on YouTube, Colin?
No, it's not, because of course there's kids on there. You'd have to blank all their faces, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. They look like they're having a blast. I mean,
Yeah,
one kid's sitting there with his mouth open catching flies, but he still looks like he's having a hell of a time.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had kids not enjoy it, and I've never had adults not enjoy it.
Right.
It's just how do you expose them to slot racing above and beyond your, Christmas gift box that ends up in the toy bin a month later.
Yeah. The way they've run robotics here, I'm sure they do it where you are too, Greg, is they have what they call event partners. And typically they have teams as well, multiple teams, if they're a big enough school. They'll have an event that you sign up for. They'll host it. So they'll have the number of robotics tables with the game on it. And, they're running the event that whole day, 10 hours, 11 hours, whatever it is. Any number of teams, however many they feel they can handle, and they'll do the round robin qualifying and then pick a certain number from all those qualifiers, the top 20, I'll just use that as a number, go to the finals, and then they pair them up, 1 with 2, 3 with 4, and so on and so forth. And it's just, that's the way it is. So the event partners are actually hosting the events, which they have a ton of, because there's a ton of teams, at least in Indiana. It was like 1,300 teams or something like that. Yeah, and they can have 6. I've only ever managed, let's just keep 6. That's a reasonable number. You get it many more than that, you've got kids who are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, and it's not good. They're not really learning anything. I think in this realm, you could probably have 2 drivers, one that's right up in the starting gate and he's going, and demand, okay, you have to switch drivers at a certain time period within the time that we're running. You have to pull into the pits, then you switch drivers. The one kid goes out, the other kid comes in, just like you would in a regular race.
Have you seen the Who digital races?
No.
Oh, look those up. WHO, Worthing HO Club or something like that. They're primarily HO, and they do very large tracks in a large room above a bar or barn or something like that. I forget what it is. Yeah. But every month or 2, they do a Skeletor digital race, and they very much do that kind of thing. The teams of 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 people switch out who's driving during the race, and their teammates help them with. They usually run RCS 64, so the teammates help them with fuel and tires and things like that. And then like at set points during the race, they like switch on a blue flashing light that says this is now when you need to switch racers or switch drivers. Okay. And then they have, until that, while that light is on, they can switch drivers. And of course, they're always refueling and changing tires and stuff like that. And they do like 100, some lap races on these huge tracks. They got to be 150 feet long at least most of the time. So yeah, look them up. They do a lot of great videos too.
Yeah, There are two clubs that really run those kind of digital oxygen events as or three clubs as a one-day thing, invitation. People can come along. That's Worthing. Worthing is one. The other one is Rockingham. They do something called Digital Sundays. You can turn up as long as you've got your car set up. You know, you register ahead of time, and it's a not serious thing. You know, it's not a serious event like Le Mans, but it's, you know, everyone's there to win. You swap around the drivers, everybody gets to go. The other one is the Stoke-on-Trent Club. There's another one up there, and maybe twice a year they run a 4-lane oxygen as well. And all of these clubs are well worth visiting, that's for sure.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
we need more of those in the States.
Yeah,
Of
exactly.
course, they'd all be spread out. Like we'll have one over in Indiana in 5 years, and then we'll have one over here in Tacoma in 10 years with how fast Alan moves on things. But they're going to be spread out. It's not going to be a day trip. It's going to be a week trip.
Yeah, well, you know, I've seen teams that for robotics will travel hundreds of miles. We've done it, and it's just insane. Fortunately, we missed once and they canceled it. That was in Louisville, which was a 3-hour drive from us. Now it's in Dallas from here forward. So if we were to ever make it back to Worlds, it's called, do we really want to make this trip? It's a lot of money, first of all, to register. Second of all, the hotel's coming out of the parents' pocket, and just on and on and on. It gets really crazy expensive. So, you know, you may qualify, but there's that opportunity where you're just like, I'm not going because I can't afford this, even though my kid made it.
Yeah, my son's robotic team made it. They actually earned their way to it. We were actually planning to go on the You Haven't Gone to Worlds Yet roster. I forget what they call it, but basically we hadn't gone to Worlds in the 7 or 8 years that we had been a team, and so we had finally moved up that list enough that we were able to take advantage of that and go to Worlds. So we were planning to go to Worlds that year anyways, but our team did well enough and got enough points to actually earn our way to Worlds.
Yeah.
Which was nice, not to say, well, we're only here on invitation, not because we earned our way. We actually earned our way, which is nice. The sad part is that you can't then go back and use that ticket in a future year because you've been to Worlds.
Right.
But that it was in Dallas that year, and we're up here in Seattle, Tacoma area.
Oh,
yeah, that was a big chunk of money, but everybody on the team was just, we did everything in our power to make sure every kid that could go was able to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was absolutely worth it. That was unfortunately my older son didn't have that opportunity, and this was my younger son's senior year that we managed to go to Worlds, so that was fantastic for him.
So you were playing in first then, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, first robotics since.
Greg, I'm gonna have to butt out.
Hey, have a good evening.
Yeah, good talking to everyone. Cheers, Alan. Cheers, Jeff.
Cheers,
Bye.
We'll
Bye.
do this again.
Yeah, robotics is fantastic. If first robotics had been around when I was in high school, my life would be completely different. And both of my sons went through the first robotics in their high school. Yeah. And they're both, my older son is a mechanical engineer working for SpaceX. Yeah. My younger son is a software programmer, software engineer. They both got degrees from University of Washington. My younger son already has a job lined up with Amazon in their software. He did an internship last summer, and they wanted him back. So he's, as soon as, in fact, he's finishing his last quarter of college at home, and he'll probably start his Amazon job from home.
Nice. Hey, as long as the checks come in, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. They're both successful and safe, and I'm happy. But yeah, if robotics had been around when I was in high school, I'm sure I would have just jumped all over that and just been a mechanical engineer or something like that instead of stay-at-home dad.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with a stay-at-home dad. I'm beginning to appreciate it, especially now because of all the we're all homeschool teachers now. I have younger kids. My oldest is in Florida with my wife, helping my mom move, but I have the two younger ones. And yeah, I have a new appreciation for teachers. Not that I didn't before, but now I'm like, you guys kick ass. You're awesome. It's frustrating some days.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's, I don't know, something like that is completely different. You know, it's new, it's exciting, and it's, I don't know. Yeah, it's just different. And there is that element, and you guys can attest to it. I look at it as all the knowledge that all you guys have gained or over the course of years can absolutely be handed down as mentors to these kids and say, well, why isn't your car operating well? Did you do this? What about that? And you just not give them the answers, but lead them on a path. It's like, I think you should go this way. Check that out. And that's beautiful. That's exactly what we should be doing. I'd hate for all that knowledge to just disappear.
And I've got to give slot cars a little bit of credit for my older son's trajectory, because he really got into slot cars, and he was racing them and tuning them, and as a teenage boy, he would have gotten into, he most likely would have gotten into cars for some reason anyways. I was never a big car buff as a teenager, but he definitely got exposed to motorsport through slot cars. We learned about how the slot cars worked and how to make them better and how much fun to race them they are. And so he wanted to become a mechanical engineer for the purposes of working for the automobile industry of some sort. He wanted to, design and work and engineer motors and things like that for cars.
Yeah.
And so for him, SpaceX is just a stepping stone to get to, wherever in the automobile industry. And
right.
I've got to say that slot cars at least had a little bit to do with that, because neither one of us were big motorsports fans until we started getting into slot cars. Everything I know about motorsports, basically, I learned through slot cars.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you have interest. Like, why is this car painted in Gulf colors? What is this? Yeah. And then you go
No.
I thought martini was a drink.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm on that path right now.
I look forward to seeing what you do with it.
Yeah, I really want to say, I mean, I think initially it's going to be PR. You're going to have to pitch it.
Yeah.
As always, but for certain, I think it has potential, and it's different. I mean, Alan, you were talking about clubs you have. You go to clubs, 4 different clubs and whatever. If Greg and I talk about clubs, it's not slot car clubs in America. Unfortunately.
Well,
Look at the clubs.
We
what
don't
can I say? For me, it's like I don't go to discos. If I'm not racing, then I'm drinking and watching metal bands. So, if I go to a club, it's a greasy, dirty, like beer bar with a band on of any kind of music. I really don't care what it is, so long as they're playing live.
Peanut shells on the floor.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, it's time for me to go too.
Yeah.
Have a good night, Alan.
Yeah. I think I got to feed the kids. They're painting Bob Ross style on the front porch right now.
Well, we've had a nice long chat, and we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, this is a great idea, to be honest with you.
See you, Alan.
All right.
Good night.
All right. Take care, Alan.
Good night.
Greg, we'll let you go, okay?
Sure.
All right. Yeah, if we had a regular one of these, this would be cool.
We'll see what we can do.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
You have a good night.
Oh, send me a PM about that program.
Yes, I will do that right now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.